Good afternoon. Welcome back to Cool Your Heels with Lillian on AMFM247.com and Passionate World Radio Network. The world is in your hands. And this afternoon, we have a guest coming back. His name is Craig-Beswick, and he represents Learn for Life. So good afternoon, Craig. How are you today?
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, we did such a good job the last time that I knew I had to have you back.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Not a problem. So please tell everybody what Learn for Life is all about and why it is so important.
Sure. So Learn for Life is a network of like-minded nonprofits really focused on addressing the dropout crisis that we have here in the United States. So we really do look to provide a wraparound service model in conjunction with our partners, and we have a variety of different partners we work with. Some are federally funded, some are at the county level, some are just providing local services around the trauma-informed movement, and that's what we're really trying to do, is to provide a trauma-informed career and community school model to help all of our programs and our students graduate, but also to become successful in the next phase of their lives.
So when a kid drops out, what are his chances of being successful?
Well, that's a great question. I think, when students come to us, they are dropouts. So we really take students that are basically about 90 days removed from their prior placement. So that means they've been out of school already for about 3 months when they hit our doors. A lot of times they find out about us through word of mouth or through our extensive network of community partners. Again, some of them are federally funded partners that provide wraparound services. So really there's just a need. And when we start to look at the dropout kind of crisis, a lot of what is going on is not reported. So there's a lot of schools that are shifting numbers around to make their dropout numbers look very low. But as our centers continuously grow, we know that is not the case and that there are many kids that need us. And obviously, students that are dropouts are going to earn at least $1 million to $1.5 million less over the course of their adult lives versus somebody that at least has a high school diploma. And really, I would venture to say that in this day and age, a high school diploma many times is not enough, especially in areas of California where we operate, where the cost of living is pretty high.
Yes. So what are some of the things you look for when a dropout comes? Do they tell you? Have you figured out why somebody drops out? What are some of the choices or decisions that these kids made based on whatever's happening that made them drop out?
Sure. I think, when you look at the 18 programs that we have in California, we have one in Ohio, one in Michigan. We will serve about 55,000 students this year and trying to get them not just a high school diploma, but a industry-recognized job credential, access to our career alumni network. So when they come to us, what we do is we really develop what's called an individualized learning plan. So they come to us for a bevy of reasons. Some of them have been dropped out years prior. Some of them are struggling with substance abuse. Some of them are court involved and are just coming out of a juvenile court and community schools. We have students that are parents that can't sit in a classroom 6 hours a day. So with our model, it really is very flexible. Students can come in anytime from 2 to 5 days a week. And again, some kids, are 22. We're able to serve up to the age of 24 in our schools because of our federally funded partnerships. So we do have the student that is 22 that is already working full-time, taking care of his own son, just needs to come in a couple times a week and really get that one-on-one attention that we provide. So, but regardless of what the need is, the ability to assess the need on the front end is critical. So when students come to us, we do what's called a social emotional learning survey, where we start to really get into the ACEs science, the adverse child experiences that we know is causing all of these kind of poor choices later in life, and really anchored in that ACEs science, we start to unravel what has gone on in this young man or this young woman's life to make sure that we're not just addressing the educational needs, but that we have a bevy of resources in our trauma-informed career and community school model that can bring things like substance abuse counseling, that can bring things like paid internships with our federally funded partners, that can bring things like help with mental health services or helping the parents get set up on Medicaid or Medi-Cal. So without all of those things, without really assessing on the front end what has happened to these youth, we really are kind of shooting in the dark, right? I mean, we can get kids jobs, we can get kids to build their academic skills within the confines of our loving, trauma-informed walls. But what we found a lot of times is once they were successful and then moved on to the next level, without those strong structural supports and relational supports, students started to fall off. So, that social emotional learning survey in the beginning, they're all screened for our federally funded programs. So if they need those types of services, they're screened right away. We do a autobiography, and many times those kids will tell you their entire life story in that autobiography. It's such an opportunity for us to really learn what is going on with these young people. So we really do a whole kind of gap needs analysis, and then obviously also give them a writing test and a reading test to make sure that we're dialed into their intellectual abilities as well. And that holistic approach, I think, is why we really have become some of the thought leaders in the trauma-informed movement.
Well, it sounds like you're very thorough. You say that some of these kids do have problems like the ones who try to get rehabilitated for drugs or alcohol and they sort of fall off the wagon. Is there additional services that they can go back and apply for to help them get back on the wagon again?
Yes. So we have our own. We take it very seriously. Many dropout programs like ours are very kind of thin in the way that they operate. And we're much more robust because we provide things like counselors. So we have our own counselors that also have some of the lowest caseloads in the country. So the recommended caseload rate is about 350 students per counselor. In many of the traditional schools in California and even in Michigan and Ohio where we operate, we're seeing caseloads 600, 700, 800 kids per counselor. So we wanted to drop that down significantly. So we're right at about 350 to 1. And then we've also made the decision to hire our own social workers. So we're hiring social workers to help with some of the more, grittier things, right? Counselors are still doing that, developing the relationship. But when it gets to a situation like you mentioned, where kids are maybe, struggling with substance abuse or they've fallen off the wagon, we then use those social workers in tandem with our community partners to really bring those services to bear. So for example, in San Diego, we are MOU'd with an organization called McAllister, and they do all of the residential drug treatment, but also come out and do some preemptive work too, right? I mean, you don't want to just attack the symptoms. I think if you look at Western medicine, that's a perfect example. Like, it's great. We can heal you if you lose an arm. We can replace your heart, and we can do all of those great things, but it's very back end in regards to attacking the symptoms versus, having a good diet, having a good mental kind of space to operate from. And there's a lot of work that we want to do on the front end to attack the root causes so that these symptoms do not proliferate.
Well, that makes sense to me because I think the biggest thing you want is that these kids come out of their experience whole and not in pieces. And sometimes some of the kids, even with their high school diplomas, are really not whole. They're missing some things. So going off to college or getting a job for them is misery because they don't really know how to handle it or fit in with it.
Absolutely. You could not have said that better. That's exactly what we see.
So I feel that's really good. Is there anything that you can do with the schools maybe for the guidance counselors to look out for some of the symptoms of somebody dropping out? I would think that 14, 15 are probably years in which the child may start exhibiting being upset, don't like it because they feel like they're in prison, they're joining gangs or something. You have something like that?
Yes, so I mean, it really does start with that kind of assessment on the front end, but also behind that is a whole entire array of trainings that are mandatory for not just our counselors, but all of our staff. So about 3 years ago, we started our trauma-informed career and community school model. And what that entails is every single one of our resource centers, and we have about 85 of them throughout the country right now, every single one of them receiving a Level 1 ACES-approved trauma-informed training. So ACES Connection is one of our partners. They're the largest online portal of trauma-informed practice in the world, and we really help with the education and the social service agencies aspect of that movement, and really have developed a framework with ACES Connection where every single one of our schools will go through a 2 to 3 year process of becoming trauma-informed, and we're also training many of our social service agencies that are partnered with us to make sure that there is a social service agency framework. So I give you that kind of broad brush because the schools are going through this process. They take the Level 1 training, and then what we do is we help them, their counselors, their principals, their leadership teams, their community liaisons that do a lot of the outreach to partners. We help them figure out, okay, do you have a mental health partner? Okay, do you have standard suicide awareness training? When are you going to have your CSEC training, which is the commercial sexual exploitation of children? And that is absolutely an endemic in San Diego. We have active pimps in our parking lot trying to get our students into prostitution. So at the local level, we really support each one of those teams developing those necessary trainings so that we are aware. Time on target, we are aware whether it's a security guard, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a teacher, tutor, that we start to see these signs. And then in our meetings, we talk about those signs and some of the kids that may be exhibiting behaviors and then reach out with that targeted support. So I love the way you framed it because that's really what we're trying to do is provide some mandatory trainings, take people through the process, but also make sure that at the local level they have those local trainings, whether it's delivered by the Learn for Life crew or local agencies, but to make sure that all those things are taken care of so that we do see those triggers the first time they're exhibited and not, 5 or 6 months down the line.
Yeah, because that way you can stop it from getting worse. I would suspect that you probably could teach some of the parents or go through the PTA or PTO and see whether or not you can use them. And because a parent pretty much knows, a mother knows, I think, probably better than a dad, but there are dads who can catch it, who would know whether their behavior, their kid has changed so much that there's going to be a problem here. I mean, yes. I think all kids talk about quitting school at 16 because it's standard like Romeo and Juliet now.
Right.
That's all you ever hear when a girl gets to be 13 or 14. Well, Romeo and Juliet didn't. And I'd say, well, that's fine, but that was then in the 14th century. We're in the 20th century, okay? It doesn't work so well. But they do bring it out. And I would think that would be a good way also of offering some kind of training to the parents through these two groups because they certainly are the strength of the schools, the parents.
Yes, and in our schools it's a little bit different. We don't have as much parental involvement because of the nature of some of the struggles that our students go through. So we do have some kids, quite frankly, that we don't want the parents involved and help them go on a different route to become emancipated, and that's rare.
Yeah.
But no, absolutely. But what you've hit on is a really a touch point for me because as a principal, I ran and developed some programs under Learn for Life as a principal and a regional principal before being blessed enough to become a vice president with the organization, supporting career technical education, all of the community outreach, and then obviously leading the charge on the trauma-informed end. But what we've really tried to do is exactly what you've said. So we have our parental advisory committee meetings. We have those, and we've done some trauma-informed trainings, not just for them to look at their kids, but for some of the parents to look at themselves and to understand that, oh my gosh, I've been dealing with all of these things and have created these bad neural patterns because of this thing that happened to me when I was 4 years old that I did not have literally the brain structure to process or heal.
Yeah.
So we've started that process in the evenings of training some of our parent groups. And really this is a larger initiative with our ACES Connection partner to create what are called community impact centers, so that when our schools, our resource centers, shut down at 6 o'clock at night, and obviously they're not open on the weekends, we have that center open as a community center. And it's not just to train on trauma, but it's to bring in things like, in San Diego, we work with the Mexican consulate, and we're helping parents and community members that are from Mexico get their high school diploma in Mexico while they're in the United States. And we have this portal with Michoacan, one of the states in Mexico. So then people would say, well, Craig, why the heck would you do that? Why would you get a bunch of people their Mexican high school diploma? Well, once we do that, then we say, well, look, if you ever go back to Mexico, you're obviously more educated, but you've done all this work now to get your Mexican high school diploma. And, oh, by the way, did you know you can take your GED in Spanish? So it's a stepping stone to help some of those parents move into different kind of arenas and jobs, hopefully. And at the very least, just give them the skills, give them a center where they can come in, they can learn meditation, they can learn yoga, they can learn the basics of ACEs science, and then bring in some other groups. In some centers, we have Zumba classes where, ladies and gentlemen are coming in from the community to take advantage of free Zumba, free English classes. So that is something we are very passionate about, is taking the parents that are interested in their kids' lives, wrapping our arms around them, and making them an integral part of what we're trying to do moving forward.
That's awesome. How do you handle the foster kids? I'm sure you have some foster kids in the San Diego school district. Do they behave any differently than the other kids who are dropping out, or can they cope better?
Well, I think they are, honestly, if you look statistically, if you look at it, they are the most at risk, or at promise, as we like to say. So they are the students that really have seen a lot of the nastier side of life, and then obviously not had some of the parental support to navigate through those things. It's interesting. My first job coming from Philadelphia to San Diego out of the Army was I worked in a group home. I worked in a level 14 group home for foster youth, and these were the kind of most severe foster youth that were struggling with substance abuse, that were on a multitude of psych meds. And it hit me like a laser beam. I said, wow, like this is really a population that we need to work better with. So the way that we do that in San Diego and in other parts of California is to really work with the existing agencies that work with foster youth. So there's some that have specific contracts, like ILS, independent living skills, to provide that wraparound service model specifically for foster youth. So we make sure that we know that coming in, that they are a foster youth. We reach out to if there's a group home involved or if there is a foster parent involved, to make sure that they understand everything we have to bear for them. I wouldn't say we do anything specific for them other than really develop that individualized learning plan, understand what resources they already have, the level of resource that they have, and then work with those resources, whether it's the group home, whether it's the CASA, who is kind of a educational rights case manager for the foster youth, and really try and integrate those folks into the larger team of support for the students.
And I suspect you do the same thing for the kids who are homeless, because they're also at risk.
Yes, ma'am. Right now we have about 5% of our kids that are really homeless. And when I say really homeless, I mean living in a car.
Yeah, they're living on the streets, or they're living in a car or a carton or something like that. Yes, I understand.
Exactly. And then we have 16% that meet the California designation for homeless. So there was a McKinney-Vento Act that basically states that if you are not living in your house with your parents, then you are technically homeless. And we do have some kids living in garages, living with an uncle, living in a loft somewhere. So really looking at those kids, and then again through the counselor, through the teacher of record. In our model, we benefit from the kids coming in and getting a teacher of record. That teacher is their person that's going to lead them through their entire educational trajectory, make them interact with our case managers, let them interact with the counselors. And what's great is they can get a lot of one-on-one support from that teacher of record, but at the same time, if that teacher of record is a math teacher, we send that student off to other teachers when they're taking English, science, social science. And we do have the ability to not just work one-on-one, but also to develop small groups. So we have SGI, which is small group instruction, where we can get a bunch of kids together that may be struggling in a certain class or a certain facet of math, for example, and really provide some targeted help to a group of kids that are at the same kind of level.
Do you ever get any kids from the migrants who come in to do the fruit and vegetables in California and some of the other states?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we have programs up in Fresno where we have a mobile lab. So we actually have a mobile school that drives up to the field, and when these parents and their kids are taking breaks, or if the parents can get their kids there, we are literally providing school right there at the farm. And then we also have in San Diego, down south, we have a lot of kids coming over from Tijuana.
Yeah.
To get their education. And some of them are living with an aunt or an uncle, or quite frankly, some of them are going back and forth because we have centers as far south as Chula Vista, which really does sit on the U.S.-Mexican border. So, and then just trying to let them understand that, in this day and age, it's a little scary. We had ICE agents actually following some of our parents and kids to school.
Yes, I was going to ask you, how is this being affected now by Trump sending down military troops to make sure the caravan from El Salvador, 7,000 strong, doesn't come up here? Because I'm pretty sure they don't make too much of a differentiation between who's coming and who's already here.
Yes, and we even saw this with the original kind of push to start to get immigrants out of the country that were not here legally. So, what we did is we made sure that we were following all the rules, right? We want to make sure we're following the rules and we're not getting in, any of these agencies' ways, but also to make sure that these agencies are operating with fidelity because they have to follow the rules too.
Yes.
And also to make sure, so we had groups come through called Know Your Rights. And these are legal groups that are very versed in immigration law and what is allowable from somebody like ICE if they show up at your door. And we had some information sessions for our parents to come through and for our kids. Some of our kids are obviously over 18 as well. So, we had those opportunities to really just, I really believe knowledge is power. And the more that you can get out there around this stuff, the more people are able to hopefully operate within this. If you are an immigrant, it's kind of scary right now. So,
have you been able to go over to some of the camps that they set up for the kids that are separated from the parents? Because I know they're older kids in that bunch where all these kids are in these, well, I call them camps, but you know what kind of camps I'm thinking they are. Mm. And I'm sure a lot of them with their schooling has been interrupted as well. Is there anything being done about that? Would that fit into anything that you're doing?
Yeah, we haven't had any, to my knowledge, any of our students be put in those facilities or any of our students' kids put in those facilities. So it hasn't really touched us directly yet. It's a part of the narrative of some of the Know Your Rights trainings that we have done in the past.
Right.
But it hasn't come across my desk or any of the principals that I talk with directly.
Okay, I was just curious because I do know the internment camps have been set up, and there's more than one apparently, and I kind of wonder what's happening to those kids and their education, because if they're not really resuming the education they had before they were separated, then those are going to become your potential dropouts in 8 years.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's something that I would like to address, and since federal funding is involved with the projects that you are working on, certainly you can find some federal funding that would help them as well.
Yes, and that's why we work with our partners. We work with a multitude of partners that receive Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act, WIOA money, Department of Labor money, Department of Rehab money. So we really work with our partners along those things, and we are the educational provider. We help them to write grants. We help support them with our facilities. Many of these case managers from these programs, they operate in our centers. So it's not like we have to send kids out to get these services or to get this information.
You go to the kids, which is just as well.
Yes, it's in our buildings, right? It's in our buildings. And when kids start to struggle for whatever reason, we have a very unique position called a student retention support position, which is literally just to track kids that are not turning in work or the kids that are not showing up physically, and we actually do home visits. So that we will do a home visit, figure out, hey, what's going on? Do you need bus tokens? That's the other thing we do is we give kids bus passes to get to us. So we're really just we need to assess it and then figure out where that resource is. And a lot of times the benefit that we've seen is by bringing those resources right into the building, right? When a kid comes and, he may have witnessed his brother get murdered, 2 weeks ago. And now we find that out, and that might not be the greatest time to talk about, hey, why haven't you turned any work in this month? That might be a great time to walk down the hallway, involve the counselor, the social worker, and the federally funded case manager to start to address those things because, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, kind of hard to study if you can't eat, don't feel safe, or are going through severe trauma.
Oh, absolutely. We're running out of time, but I'm just curious. Some of the older people of family are being diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Do you have any kids who are caregivers to people within their family that also have dropped out because the stress of taking care of their parents or older relatives is too much for them to cope with going to school and learning?
Absolutely. And really what we've started to do is start to help those families. We have a growing career technical education model where we help students get industry-recognized job credentials while they're still in our school. So one of the areas we do is child development, and healthcare is another area, and within those areas are patient care. So we've actually helped some of our students get, our older students, 18 to 24, get certified in home care so that then they can go and actually get paid to take care of their aunt or their grandmom or their father or mother that may have, early onset dementia or, a list of other health conditions. So that is something we're trying to address, not just by saying, okay, what do you need from us that the school and the resource center can provide, but hey, let's actually put a fishing rod in your hand and teach you to fish and actually get something that you can then go get paid for and still help take care of your family. So it's just kind of something.
It's a win-win situation. I like that.
Yes.
I'm glad I asked. All right, Craig, please tell everybody where they can find your organization and everything else about you so they know where to find you.
Sure. So, again, we are a network of like-minded nonprofits, really addressing the trauma-informed crisis and the dropout problem that we have in this country. If you want to check us out, you can go to www.learn, LEARN, 4, life, LIFE.org. So it's www.learn4life.org.
Oh, great. And ladies and gentlemen, before we close it up, the Marquis of Halifax had this to say: in political thoughts and reflections in the late 17th century, men in business are in as much danger from those that work under them as from those that work against them. Thank you all very much for listening to Craig-Beswick and Learn for Life. And now you know what to do and how to do it. You just have to contact them and go forward. You can hear this interview all over again on Tuesdays evening from 8 to 9 p.m. on AMFN247.com, or go over to https://passionateworldradionetwork.com, or try out some of the smart speakers like Alexa. It's on there. It'll show up on iTunes and also show up on iHeart and Facebook.com/Passionate World Radio and PWR Network LLC, Twitter.com/ at PWR Network LLC, and all the other social networks and directories. Thank you all very much for listening, and remember, please keep listening. Thank you.